Tonight, the stage is set for an election face-off in the middle of a trade war.
We're offering a positive vision for the country, a vision of action.
The puck drop for an early election call this weekend.
I want to bring it home, and that's why we need to put Canada first.
If you want someone that's going to fight for you and your family, that's us, that's New Democrats.
The close race as Canadians prepare to cast their ballots as soon as next month. 100% tariffs. China takes aim at Canadian canola. Farmers at the center of a political storm speak out.
Nobody's going to get out of this scot-free.
What investigators found about the final moments in a fiery crash landing in Toronto.
Holy
More Teslas targeted in Canada. What's driving the growing rage? And an historic jackpot win.
$25 million!
Congratulations are in order for an outstanding Canadian achiever.
So I should have taken my pulse to see if I was alive.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Todd Vanderhayden.
Good evening. Get ready for a spring election. Sources confirming to CTV News that Prime Minister Mark Carney will call a snap election this Sunday. The polls have shifted dramatically in the last 3 months after the resignation of Justin Trudeau and, of course, Donald Trump's ongoing trade war on Canada. CTV's Rachel Aiello on a volatile campaign to come and when Canadians might be heading to the polls.
And we're going to win. We're going to win, baby.
Getting set to face off in a federal election, Mark Carney is sounding confident. But the players he's about to go up against won't go as easy on him as the Edmonton Oilers did on the ice today. Multiple sources confirmed to CTV News that the Prime Minister will be asking the Governor-General to dissolve Parliament and trigger a snap election on Sunday, sending Canadians to the polls on either April 28th or May 5th. The Prime Minister stopped short of confirming his plans today, but outlined his rationale for why he wants voters to have their say.
In this time of crisis is that the government needs a strong and clear mandate.
Thank you very much, everyone.
The Conservatives are already well into campaign mode, making policy announcements and sharpening their message at events all week.
We need to put Canada first. It's time to bring home our jobs, energy, and economic sovereignty.
The NDP are starting this race in third place and will be trying to offer voters an alternative.
Who's going to prioritize working families over billionaires? That answer is very simple.
Calling an election this weekend means Carney will avoid recalling Parliament, where he was set to face a confidence vote within days. But it also means rule changes the government wanted to implement to make it easier to vote and harder to meddle won't be in place. With polls showing a tightening battle between the top two parties, pollsters are predicting a volatile campaign.
Right now, people are really plugged into what's going on because of tariffs and Trump and all of that. So I think there's a real potential that things could move a lot more wildly this campaign.
There will be more seats up for grabs in this election than ever before. 343 to be exact. And with just days left to decide, we still don't know which riding the Prime Minister will be running in. Todd?
All right. Thanks very much, Rachel. Our chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelos, is in Ottawa. And Vashi, as you know, calling a snap election is always a gamble. What would Carney's strategy be here, potentially?
I think there's a couple of things the Carney camp is considering, at least from the people around him who I've been speaking to. The first is that the opposition was going to make sure that the government folded soon after Parliament resumed on Monday. They had promised to do so. The second is Mark Carney doesn't have a seat in the House of Commons. The last thing he and his team really want is for there to be fights between the opposition and the government, and Carney to be nowhere in the mix for that. And then the third thing, and I think the most significant strategically, is that they want to do what Doug Ford was able to do, to put it quite bluntly, to capitalize on the issue of Donald Trump, the threats coming from Donald Trump and south of the border to both our economy and our sovereignty, because it has helped them so much where public opinion polling is concerned. They want to be able to capitalize on that right now. The sooner, the better from where they sit.
Yeah, and you know this in the work you do every day. There is so much going on politically right now. The U.S. trade war against Canada, Trump weighing in on Canadian politics this week. How does it all kind of factor in, especially when you take a look at some of those polls?
Yeah, those polls, Todd, have been really unlike anything I've seen in my entire career in journalism. If we were having this conversation even just 2.5 months ago, let's say at the end of last year, and we would have been having a completely different conversation. The Tories were double digits ahead of the Liberals. Now, when you take a look at those polls in the aggregate, they're within the margin of error of each other. It is an incredibly competitive race, which heightens the importance of this campaign as well. And it shows you what the combination of Justin Trudeau resigning plus Donald Trump entering the fray in the threatening way that he has, the impact that combination has had on politics in this country, again, like nothing basically I have ever seen before. Todd.
All right, thanks very much, Vashi. And you can watch our special coverage of the election call hosted by our chief anchor, senior editor Omar Sachedina, and our chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapellos, coming up this Sunday on CTV News Channel and ctvnews.ca. Well, Chinese tariffs on Canadian imports of canola and seafood products took effect today. That's in response to Canadian tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, steel and aluminum. We have a reaction from both the Prairies and the Maritimes, starting with CTV's Alison Bamford in Saskatoon.
Farmers are frustrated that the price of their hard work is dropping.
That's like getting 2 kicks in the backside.
First, the 25% U.S. tariffs were announced. Now China's tit-for-tat 100% tariffs on canola oil, canola meal, and peas are in effect. The uncertainty has pushed canola prices down about $2 a bushel.
Nobody's going to get out of this scot-free.
Clinton Monchuk's a fourth-generation farmer. He stands to lose $100,000 on his canola crops this year.
And then when you add in all the other commodities that are taking a hit on the prices, we're pretty close to $250,000.
The tariffs come just weeks before seeding, a time when farmers invest thousands of dollars per acre into seed, fertilizer, fuel, and equipment just to get their crops in the ground.
The Chinese have deliberately timed this to have a maximum impact on Canadian agriculture.
In Regina, producers have met all week at Canada's Farm Show. The two-front trade war is top of mind.
If we don't have a market for our crop, it's going to stay in a bin, and that is going to affect the farmer's cash flow, right? And that's going to cause farmers not being able to pay for those bills, those input costs.
Ottawa says it will support farmers, but producers are still waiting to hear any concrete measures that will help. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Saskatoon.
I'm Paul Hollingsworth in Eastern Passage, Nova Scotia. A 25% tariff by China on Canada's seafood exports is the first blow in a devastating double punch. Another 25% U.S. imposed tariff could slam the Canadian seafood industry on April 2nd. People who make their living at sea say uncertainty and fear are on the rise.
So if they can't pass that on to their customers on the other end, they can't absorb it themselves, right? Then that leaves, me, the harvester, to absorb this.
China is Canada's second largest seafood export market after the U.S. The search is on to find new global markets to sell seafood before costs are passed on to Canadian consumers.
Because that's ultimately what it means, whether they pay the tariffs or our exporters pay the tariffs. There's 25% more in costs.
There are many unknowns about how these tariffs could impact other aspects of the industry. Boat builders, processing plants, equipment manufacturers, and restaurants, to name a few, could all take a major hit.
What does that do to those companies? Does that put them in a position where they have to temporarily lay off staff?
Industry leaders expect the tariffs to trigger seafood price increases by late spring, and they could be long-term. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Eastern Passage, Nova Scotia.
We're learning more today about the crash landing of a Delta Airlines plane last month at Canada's busiest airport in Toronto. CTV's Sean Leathong on a new report about the final minutes of the flight.
The preliminary report issued by the Transportation Safety Board this morning says that the Delta CRJ 900 that crash landed at Pearson Airport last month was descending far too quickly in the final few seconds.
Well, everything was normal right up until about the 150-foot mark.
In a video released by the TSB today, the chain of events are detailed.
The side stay attached to the aircraft's right main landing gear fractured, the landing gear retracted, and the wing root fractured between the landing gear and the fuselage.
According to aviation expert Phil Doherty, the aircraft was descending at a rate of over 1,100 feet per minute while the landing gear on the plane is designed to withstand a maximum of just over 700 feet per minute.
With Endeavour Air, their classification of a hard landing is anything over 600 feet per minute. So like I said, when they impacted the ground, it was way beyond the structural limits of the aircraft.
Once the landing gear failed, the plane impacted and rolled onto its right side.
The right wing detached from the fuselage, releasing a cloud of jet fuel, which caught fire while the aircraft began to slide along the runway.
Interviews with passengers on the day of the crash spoke to how the landing seemed normal until the last few seconds.
And when we hit, it was just a super hard, like a hit the ground.
Everything, drop it.
Of the 80 people on board the flight from Minneapolis to Toronto, 21 people were sent to hospital and no one was killed.
The question remains is why there was such a high rate of descent. Usually at about the 100 feet mark, where it's starting to pull back, about 150 feet, they're pulling back on the power, also starting to level out the aircraft to reduce the descent rate. But that didn't happen. The descent rate actually increased. So it begs to wonder what was going on in the cockpit.
The TSB is saying they ran multiple simulations to better understand the circumstances surrounding the crash, and their final report will be issued much later.
Sean Lee Thong, CTV News.
Teslas have been targeted again here in Canada, this time in Ontario. It's part of a series of attacks on dealerships on both sides of the border. CTV's Heather Wright looks at the reasons and the repercussions.
Punctured tires, scratched doors, defaced hoods. More than 80 vehicles were damaged at a Tesla dealership in Hamilton, Ontario, believed to be the largest act of vandalism in Canada against the U.S. automaker.
I think everybody understands the climate in the world right now. There's nothing to suggest that this is motivated by that at this moment. It's under investigation.
Tesla vehicles have become a target in cities around the world ever since company CEO Elon Musk closely aligned himself with President Trump and began to slash government spending and jobs through the Department of Government Efficiency. In Montreal this week, 2 environmental activists were arrested for vandalizing a dealership while calling on Canada to take a stand against Musk, saying he is, quote, destroying democracy and spreading climate denial. South of the border, attacks have ranged from vandalism, arson, to shots being fired into showrooms.
I think it's totally disgusting and inappropriate.
The U.S. Attorney General says it all amounts to domestic terrorism, and today charged 3 people for setting fire to cars and charging stations. And while the U.S. president tried to give Musk's company a boost,
everything's computer,
by turning the White House lawn into a de facto showroom, Tesla stock has cratered over the last few months, from a $1.7 trillion valuation to under $800 billion. And some owners are now trying to distance themselves from Musk by putting these stickers on their cars.
2 reasons. One, to keep the car from being vandalized, and the other is to put it out there that it's not because you drive a Tesla that you agree with fascist politics.
Concerns around recent vandalism and protests have led the Vancouver Auto Show to remove Tesla from this week's event. And in another blow to the company today, Tesla recalled nearly every Cybertruck it's ever made because an exterior panel is at risk of falling off. Todd.
Heather Wright. Thanks, Heather. And that same environmental group that Heather just mentioned targeted the U.S. Embassy today in Ottawa.
Last Generation Canada, a non-violent civil resistance campaign tackling and demanding a climate disaster protection agency.
This woman was taken into custody for spray painting the outside of the building, protesting against President Trump's policies. Meantime, CTV News has learned that Canada is negotiating with European countries to form a new defense alliance. This comes as questions grow among NATO members about whether the United States under Trump is still a reliable partner. CTV's Adrian Gobriel on how Canada is taking on that challenge.
Canada's next generation fighter jet suspended in limbo.
It's prudent and in the interest of Canada to review those options.
The options include scrapping plans to purchase a total of 88 F-35 fighter jets from U.S.-based Lockheed Martin. Ottawa has already paid for 16 of the supersonic jets, though the remainder of the order is now under review, as Canada and other allies ponder if they can count on America for replacement parts and system upgrades integral to the long-term viability of the sky-high stealth fighters.
What really makes it an effective military platform is all of the software and the networking that really connects it. That software all comes from the United States.
Ottawa may have little choice but to proceed with the F-35. The Air Force's CF-18s are near the end of their life expectancy.
They are barely capable in a fighter force that is no longer tactically viable or survivable in modern warfare.
Retired Royal Canadian Air Force Lieutenant Billy Flynn was a test pilot for the F-35.
What is the best kit that we need today and moving to the next generation? And in the case of fighters, there's only one option, it's the F-35.
The debate comes as Canada and Europe enter defence partnership negotiations, though even our Navy's soon-to-be made-in-Canada River-class destroyers have current plans that rely on U.S. combat systems.
And we are, like it or not, interlinked with a brother down south that we no longer get along with.
As for defence partnership negotiations between Canada and Europe, the Canadian military's ability to step up and help a European country should it come under attack may be questioned. Presently, Canada's naval and air force capabilities are limited. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Coming up, whistleblowers speaking out.
They wanted me to cut my hair. They wanted me to wear men's clothing. They wanted me to change my name.
The alleged cult being accused of forcing people to change their genders. It's a horrifying allegation. A whistleblower from inside of a controversial spiritual movement claims the founders have brainwashed followers into changing their genders. W5's Avery Haynes has part 3 of her investigation into a group known as Twin Flames Universe.
I was part of this gender conversion program. Like, I know that these people are being pushed.
Keely Griffin is the highest-ranking Twin Flame Universe follower to defect.
Anytime that someone would resist, we would have to report back and be like, oh, this person didn't want to accept that they're a man. Jeff and Shalia would then mark them on a list of people who needed to be watched and continually forced to accept.
Keely was part of the inner circle of the controversial online spiritual group. She once dedicated her life to Twin Flames Universe founders, Canadian Shalia Devine and her husband, Jeff Devine.
You had to tell people, hey, God, through Jeff, is telling you that you're actually not a woman, you're a man. How did they take that?
Horribly. I mean, the look in their eyes is haunting.
Angie Moggy in Ontario and Victoria Benia in Virginia say they were among those paired up following Jeff's channeling sessions from God.
It was an immediate, no, this is not it. And I said, Angie's not my twin flame, I'm not a lesbian.
And they said, well, Angie's not a woman.
Angie claims she was pressured to identify as a man.
They wanted me to cut my hair. They wanted me to wear men's clothing. They wanted me to change my name.
Jeff and Shalia's teachings dictate that everyone is either 100% masculine or 100% feminine, and that a twin flame union can only exist between a masculine and a feminine.
Homosexuality doesn't even really exist. If you're really two masculine energies having sex, you're just shaking hands because it's not your twin flame anyway.
A gender, it's just an identity role, meaning it's not real. You can change it.
Did no one say, this is crazy? He's telling us what gender we are. They're telling us who we have to be in love with.
There were a couple women who just straight up left from that moment. They said, I'm not a man, I'm not doing this. And they left. And then some of them stayed and are still in there.
Some of them stayed and didn't just adopt masculine names and clothing, but took it further.
Yes. Some of them started taking testosterone. Some of them have started having gender-affirming surgeries and are living as men.
18 members of the Twin Flames universe have transitioned. We don't know how many had been questioning their gender before they joined the group, and they insist they were not coerced. But Jeff and Shalia had a message for those who resisted.
So when God tells you something, you need to respect it. If he says that's your twin flame, respect it. If he says you are this, respect it. You can respect God's word, or you can throw a tantrum and be a little jerk. Be an immature child, and then you're gonna get spanked by the universe.
Twin Flames Universe has hundreds of thousands of Facebook followers and about 2,000 paying students. 16 followers now live near Traverse City, Michigan, where Jeff and Shalia Devine live in a 7,000 square foot mansion.
I fear for the lives of the people in the cult until something is done to hold Jeff and Shalia accountable. I'm not going to stop, and I hope that Jeff and Shalia know that.
And tomorrow, a world exclusive as founders Jeff and Shalia Devine face all the accusations against them. And you can watch W5's 2-hour special called We're Not a Cult inside Twin Flames Universe coming up this Saturday at 7 on CTV. All right, still ahead for us. Where Canada ranks on the list of the world's happiest countries. A groundbreaking day for the International Olympic Committee, electing its first ever female president and first ever president from Africa.
Mrs. Kirsty Coventry.
Kirsty Coventry is a former 2-time gold medalist from Zimbabwe. She defeated 7 other contenders. She assumes one of the most powerful sports positions in the world in June. And Canada has slipped in the world happiness rankings, dropping to number 18, down from 15 last year. Finland was named happiest country in the world for the 8th straight year, while the United States fell to 24th. All right, still ahead for us. Jackpot, an 81-year-old Order of Canada recipient, gets a big winning surprise. Finally for us tonight, an 81-year-old man from Ontario thought he'd cashed in when his lotto ticket suggested he'd won $25,000, but he was in for a jackpot-sized surprise when he double-checked the winning ticket.
I didn't have my glasses on. Then I went back to check on what I thought was $25,000 and saw with my glasses on, it was 25 million. Perhaps someone would suggest I should have taken my pulse to see if I was alive, given the amount of the win.
Charles Coffey had indeed won the $25 million Ontario Lotto Max jackpot. Coffey says he bought the lucky ticket when he purchased a chocolate bar after filling up his tank at a Toronto gas station. But Coffey's unique story is not finished there.
And you are an officer of the Order of Canada, among many other things. How does that feel?
Well, it feels tremendous. The motto of the Order of Canada is, they desire a better country. I think that speaks to me. I desire a better Toronto, a better Ontario, a better Canada. And in particular, I want a better Canada for Canada's Indigenous peoples.
Coffey is the first jackpot winner in Ontario who also has the Order of Canada, which he received for supporting women in business and, yes, for fighting for Indigenous rights. He says he'll invest the winnings and use any earnings from that to support important causes. And that's our show for today. Heather Butts is back tomorrow. For all of us here at CTV National News, I'm Todd Vanderheyden. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your night.